And we are live, everybody. So I am here with Brian Lardy. And just some background. When Brian came to me, he was in a big corporate bureaucracy with no vision of where he's going or what he was going to do. Now he is at a really exciting new startup job. He's making $26,000 a year more than he used to. Pandemic be damned. Everyone's like, oh, you can't get a new job in a pandemic. Well, obviously not the case. And he's got an exciting new career path in front of him with a couple different steps and an absolutely amazing, unique destination. So I wanted to bring Brian on today to share his story, so you guys can see both that, success is still possible despite all the situations, and see how he came there. So Brian, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Sean.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So let's get started with something. Just walk us through, if we just rewind, right, to before you'd ever heard of me or Oculus or anything, where were you? Just describe that for us.
Oh, man. So I was in the second job that I had burnt out from in my career path that I had chose. And I was just wondering, where is this going? Like, if I maintain this career path, if I change jobs to another job, I'm going to fall into the same trap every time possibly. And the stress was just creating so much pain for me physically and emotionally. And I just felt like just trapped, I felt like I needed something else. And I started pursuing different avenues, just researching. Some friends of mine had talked about like starting businesses and entrepreneurship. And I thought, oh, that sounds so much better than, the corporate stuff that I'm doing, but I need to just find some way to get there. So I was just searching for different ways. I knew that it wasn't going to be something that I could maintain long-term. And I was just searching for answers.
Okay. So you mentioned physical pain. Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, like especially in my back. I have kind of like sciatic pain, but I also just kind of felt like tightness of like my back muscles, especially. And I feel like I need to just like stretch, and like, it just feels like, it's kind of hard to describe, but I guess it would be like really high cortisol and like just really like toxins built up. And I felt like my stamina was decreasing. I started gaining a lot of weight. Felt like I wanted to sleep a lot more. I had trouble remembering things, just many different things, but especially for pain, the sciatic pain and the back pain, it was the most of it.
Okay. Yeah, I will say there's a difference between the cortisol and the neuromuscular tension. So both are the result of stress, but
yeah,
stress screws you medically in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Dr. Richard Harris, my buddy who I introduced you to, he had me on his podcast because he has a health and nutrition podcast to talk about the different ways that burnout stress can like really screw with your health. So if you guys are interested in that, you can go Google Strive for Great Health podcast, Sean Cecil, and you can go listen to that one. But yeah, no, that's certainly a thing. You also mentioned emotional pain. How were you coping with that?
Drinking.
Oh, that was a very succinct answer.
Yeah.
So just out of curiosity, can you give some, and if you don't want to, I totally understand, but some indicator of the intensity of that drinking?
Yeah, I mean, it was daily, maybe like 3 or 4, sometimes more drinks a day. And it really depends. Yeah.
I remember you saying it was daily. I didn't know it was that much daily. Okay. Wow. Okay. And so what was your rock bottom moment? When did you decide that, hey, listen, this has got to change come hell or high water?
So there was like a big company reorganization where I was working, and they basically drafted people from like certain departments to work on like some other project. And at that time, people's work got offloaded to them and transferred to other people. My workload doubled. I inherited 5 extra projects. Jesus. And one of them was just this nightmare project that was just going horribly bad. And like the project engineer that I was working, the project manager guy, internal customer, was just really incompetent, and he would just always want like status updates on things that he didn't really understand, and he wouldn't take what I would say seriously, and just creating pressure on me and throwing me under the bus. And like, I just felt like, how can I live like this? Like this, there's no way I can stay like this, but I don't know where to go. And with the drinking and the stress, my parents had told me I should contact my doctor to see if they have any like medications for stress. And then the doctor was like, dude, you're totally burnt out. You should do this work health program that we have. And it's like a 4 or 5 week course, and it teaches you about coping with stress. I'm like, all right, cool. That's a good idea. So I joined the program, and I quickly realized that basically it doesn't teach you how to find something better. It teaches you how to cope with the stressful job that you have, which to me was like, it's a good step, but it's not what I want. It's not fulfilling. It's not, I don't want to just be okay in this hell. I want to thrive. I want to be
sit down and shut up, citizen. Let us train you how to deal with your pain so that you can continue being a rat in the maze.
So I got through this. I'm like, well, what the hell am I supposed to do? What am I going to do? If I'm going to start a business, it's got to take off now. But what am I going to do? How do I get it started? How do I mitigate the risks of starting a business if, 90% of them fail within the first 5 years? What do I do? And I had researched a lot of things, and it said, like, you should really have a good mentor. So I thought, okay, great. Have a mentor and maybe help me decide what to do. And I recalled seeing these Facebook posts from the Oculus Institute, and I had like a replaying record in my mind, like, oh, I remember the Oculus Institute. What the hell was that? It sounded like something. And then that's sort of how I got into it. I just, I started reading, and I looked into the website, and I thought, okay, this is it. I have to just do something,
So as you were doing this search, aside from your doctor's coping program, was there anything else you stumbled on? Anything else you were looking at?
Not really. Nothing else really. I kind of just, that was the first one that came to my mind. I just went with it.
Okay. So for whatever reason, the content spoke to you, right? And then what caused you to actually like reach out and book a call and chat?
So when I saw your Facebook ads before, they just came up like they usually do, from some algorithm. And I remember reading the content of the posts and thinking, this guy totally gets it. He totally understands how I feel. Like, he's like speaking to my soul. Like, I remember you said certain things about like how people with businesses make so much more money and they're more fulfilled. They're happier than, people with
well, they can be. I mean, if you're in a failing
business,
can be. It could be a lot worse.
It could be.
Somebody gone down that path, unfortunately, myself. Like, it's a matter of execution. It can be much better. It can be much worse.
Right. So I remember like thinking about how I had this vision of where my career would be at this age, like before I started college. And I thought, oh yeah, I'm going to make 6 figures, and I'm going to have a house by now. I'm going to have like 3 cars in the garage and have a family and kids. And like, that just didn't happen. And I think like I had this expectation because people in previous generations had a different economy. And here we are today. And I just expected, I have to follow some different path. And it felt like what you were saying made a lot of sense. But even more than just like the financial part, the part that made a lot of sense is that you focus on happiness. And to me, I would even be willing to take a pay cut for more happiness.
No, so well, you didn't have to take a pay cut.
I didn't.
It's really funny, actually, because the people who are most concerned and they're like, hey, listen, I will not take a pay cut. Money's the most important. I can't, I'm going to give up my happiness. They're the ones who actually end up making less because they stay trapped. Whereas the people who say, I'm willing to take a pay cut to do something that's really fulfilling, because they go out there and they look and they explore the opportunities, they actually end up making more. So it's kind of paradoxical. It's like Thomas Jefferson's thing about those who would sacrifice liberty for security end up with neither. It's a very similar dynamic.
Yep.
So that's why I always tell people, like, you should never settle. It's like a relationship, you know. You're not like, oh well, you know, this person's okay, I guess I'll marry them. You know, you've got to really be into it. And I feel the same way about careers. And a lot of people, they seem to think, well, oh, it's just supposed to suck. You just spend, 45 years of sucking, and then, at the end, then you can, have a couple of years of fun before you die. Well, you're falling apart, and it's like, what the hell kind of logic is that? And so I guess that's something that you firmly rejected, and that resonated with you a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. And so then because of that, so you reached out, you booked a call, we talked, right? We're like, hey, listen, this makes sense. You said, let's go. Right. Yep. So we get started, right? Out of curiosity, was there anything early on, like before you really got to know me and my methodology, was there anything that I said that you were skeptical of? Or did it just all resonate from day one?
No, there's one thing I was skeptical of. Actually, before on the call, the first call we had, I remember I was skeptical. So I had done my homework, basically like, all right, everything this guy says makes perfect sense. I want to know before I, get involved and have this mentor, how do I know that I can really trust this guy? And he knows what he's talking about. And I remember searching your videos. And I'm like, wait a minute, this guy doesn't have like hardly any like views or followers. What the hell is going on here? I think you probably remember that.
I remember that. Yeah, I do.
Yeah. And I was like, all right, so like everything you're saying sounds really legit. It sounds, really good. How do I know I can trust you? How do I know you're not full of shit? So that was the one thing I was skeptical of before we started. And then I remember I was skeptical, not really skeptical. I was a little surprised when we started. Then you were talking about like the internal journey and the external journey. I'm like, wait a minute, where's the business part? Where am I going to start this? I kind of just had a different expectation. I'm like, okay, why do I have to do all this like internal part? I didn't really get it. But then as things started moving, I go, whoa, it's really, something totally different. But
I'm sure people who watch these videos must be getting sick of hearing this, because every time I bring a successful client on, they're like, yeah, I was really focused on the external, and then I did the internal. I was like, oh my God, this changes everything. Really hard to convey. And just for context for people, right? The whole starting a business, getting a new job, all that kind of stuff is the external. And then the internal is more around, what's going on with limiting beliefs, what's going on with stress inside, all that other kinds of stuff. All the things that end up actually being the problem, like 90 to 95% of the time, right? And then, people think it's the external, but really it's normally the internal. And then when you sort out the internal, the external becomes a lot easier. And so that, I know people who watch these videos must be like, oh, I hear this every single time, but it's true. And that's why it keeps coming up.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man. So, okay. So I remember you were skeptical, like you are so spot on. Why don't you have like 1 million followers? And I was like, well, a lot of that comes down to marketing, which I'm working on, which is, as one reason why I'm going to be doing a pretty big book launch soon, because I want to get the message out there, spread the good word, but everybody's got to start somewhere. And then the other thing about the internal versus external, right? You were skeptical of that. Now, if I recall correctly, of all the things we did in the course, it was one of those internal things that was ultimately very life-changing for you. Is that something you'd be open to sharing with everyone?
Yeah.
Awesome. So let's hear that story.
So you're talking about the transformation thing?
Yes, the life-altering transformation. Yeah.
So I didn't realize that somewhere deep from my past, there was something buried in my subconscious or unconscious mind, actually. And it's like this bully that would just attack me, but I wouldn't actually really realize it was attacking me. And I had this limiting belief that I'm stupid, and like it would like limit me from learning things limit me from being motivated, limit me from even probably being ambitious and dreaming of different things, and I started to feel like maybe I'm not cut out for a long-term dream. Maybe like the corporate world is where I'm going to end up, and maybe this is not going to work. Maybe I thought too highly of myself before I got into this course. And then we would pinpoint where this demon was, because we were like, well, why isn't this working? Why do you feel this way? And I remember it was really difficult to find this part of my mind too. But once we nailed it down, and went through the process, I remember I felt this like, it felt like I had never loved myself before. Like I immediately knew what self-love was, but it's like I didn't really know what it was before. I remember there was a training on self-love, and it talked about how you should unconditionally love yourself. I'm like, do I feel like that? And I think so. I don't really know. And it was like at that moment, after I faced down this huge internal demon, I just realized like this is what it feels like. This is unconditional self-love. I love myself no matter what.
Yep.
I don't care what this demon says. I don't care what it tries to tell me.
Yep.
I'm going to put it on timeout.
I think there are a couple important lessons there. I think one is that there is a process for life-altering transformations. And it's ironically, you would think it would be more commonly known. It's not. But it is a reliable, repeatable formula. And you and I, as engineers, because I got my degree in engineering way back before any of this, and obviously, that's what you do. We like reliable, repeatable processes. That's our jam, right?
Yep.
I think the other component to this is, you talk about self-love and this notion that, oh yeah, I guess I love myself. A lot of people, they exist in that uncertainty. And that's where they stay, and they tell themselves that they do, but they don't really understand it. And it's one of those things where if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. If it's an I think so, it's a no.
Yeah.
Right. And it's something that needs to be addressed. And I think a lot of people, they skate over that because it's really, it hurts to really look at the truth and say, oh yeah, I actually don't really love myself. Right. Yeah. It's painful, but the only way to ever get past anything in life is to feel the pain and then let it flow through you.
Yep.
If you don't let yourself feel the pain, you're never going to get over it. Yep. Right. And I think that's an important thing that a lot of people, it's really easy to get caught up in the, bunnies and butterflies and rainbows, positive psychology kind of stuff. And, like the law of attraction kind of stuff, like the law of attraction is a phenomenon that does exist, but it's not the only one. There's a lot of other phenomena out there. And if you just obsess about just trying to be happy and focusing on the positive, and you create this spiritual bypass, you're going to get stalled because you're not actually dealing with everything that's there. And then the third point that you made is, and this is in the beginning, you talked about how it was this lack of self-love, this lack of belief that made you think, hey, listen, maybe this is all that's meant for me in life. I can't dream big because I'm not good enough. And I think that limiting belief is something that so many people, probably most people, walk around with all the time, and it's buried down there, and they don't pay attention to it. But every now and then it comes up. Every now and then they listen to it in their internal, dialogue. And in the course of that, that's what causes people to settle for jobs that aren't rewarding, that aren't fulfilling, that aren't paying them what they're worth, that aren't leading to a life that they can really be proud of. Right. And, the truth is that when you actually step up and strive for more, there's so much more potential that people don't realize. David Goggins talks about this. He's like, a lot of people think that they can do X, but in reality, they can do 5X, but they're never going to know unless they push themselves to try.
Yeah.
And it's just been my experience that those limiting beliefs are just so often just so far from reality,
Yeah.
It is easy to say from this side for you and me, obviously, and that's one of the reasons why I like to do these videos, so that people can hear like, oh, this person was just like me and now they're here, right? Like this transformation can occur. I want people to be inspired by that. And there was a fourth thing you mentioned that I wanted to highlight, and that is you talked about putting the inner bully in timeout.
Yeah.
People don't realize they think they are their thoughts, right? And this is a core principle of the internal work we did, which is disidentification,
Yep.
This core principle of disidentification. People think that they are their thoughts. People think that, oh, I'm thinking that I'm crap. But in reality, right, you are not whatever random programmed thoughts are running through your head. You are the programmer. You are in charge. The mind is not your master, it is your servant. And making that switch is just completely life-altering.
It's huge.
Yeah. So cool. Well, now that we've had the inevitable talk about the internal journey, and I apologize to people for the lighting right now. The sun's coming out from the clouds and it's causing the lighting to be a little bit weird, but that's okay. Now that we've had the obligatory talk about the internal journey, let's talk about the external journey, right? So, we looked at a couple different options. I know that we tried freelancing, but because you hadn't gotten specific certification yet, that kind of held us back from that a little bit. But ultimately, we got you into a wonderful new job at a startup. So share that journey, share everything that went along with that, especially around the fact that a lot of people right now are talking about the coronavirus pandemic, which has been going on for about a year now. And, I very often hear people say, hey, listen, you can't get a new job in a pandemic. It doesn't work like that. You just clutch on to what you have because there are no other options. Obviously, you've had a different experience. So share with us that journey.
So I started this program before the pandemic, and I had certain expectations around what was going to happen. And once the pandemic hit, everything kind of changed, and I realized, it's going to be a lot harder to get things. But ironically enough, I was still getting a lot of hits from recruiters about jobs, but a lot of them were jobs I felt that I didn't really want because they shared a lot of the same characteristics as the job that I was in that was burning me out. So I thought, okay, well, if I jump from one iceberg to another and I'm going to sink from the next one, then, what should I do? I know that the iceberg I'm on is already sinking. I think you used this analogy before. I need to jump, but I need to jump somehow. But, I thought, to get a better job, first of all, am I even qualified to get a better job? I remember you told me that, I'm worth more. I should be, getting paid more of what I'm worth. But I kind of didn't really see it for a while. Yep. Until we went through the program and I started.
Well, that's the internal journey again.
Yeah. But then, I just started applying to more, and I had a couple of interviews, but it was very difficult getting through the the cover letters and proposals at first because of that internal demon I had. And once we got
the cover letters and the resume stuff.
Yeah. Well, the cover letters and I was saying with the proposals with the freelancing as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I remember I had a lot of difficulties with those before. But once I, put the demon on timeout, so to speak, things started to get a lot easier. And there was a lot of trial and error. I had to really, keep going forward. I had to really face myself into what am I really looking for in the next role? If I'm going to get another job, I had to really think carefully. I remember we had a lot of talks about work-life balance and things like that. And ultimately I had to figure out what it is that I wanted. And I didn't expect to end up in a startup actually, because I think I was really afraid of working so many hours. But the thing is working more hours doing something you enjoy is different than working more hours doing something you hate. So once I let that go, very quickly afterwards, I had an interview with some company I just applied at, and I kind of wasn't really thinking that much when I was applying. I was kind of just doing some of those on Indeed easy applies. You know what I'm talking about? So, and then I go, okay, yeah, we want to interview you. I'm like, okay, cool. I don't really know much about this.
Let me just stop you there. Did the interview, the job that you're at right now, you did an easy apply on that?
I did.
But you did the cover letter, right?
I didn't do the cover letter for this one, actually.
Wow. So just so you know, the success rate of that is like less than 1%.
Is it?
Of the easy applies, yeah, the success
Yeah.
rate is less than 1%. Your resume they must really like your resume because that normally does not work. Normally, I always tell people you've got to do the cover letters.
Right. So I was doing cover letters, but also doing like additional easy applies on the side. Just why not, right? Just because. And this is one that hit. And
that's impressive.
Yeah. Thanks. So like I get there and I'm talking to this guy and he's like really friendly. I'm like, okay, yeah, this seems to it seems like it's, kind of a good fit. Like they seem very welcoming. And I remember the interview I had before that, this guy was just a jerk. So like I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to work for this other guy, but this company seems, nice. So I went to go check it out. And I remember I had a conversation with the HR guy. And it turns out he has certain things in common with me. I'm into cars, as you know. He used to race cars for a living. That was his career, like an amateur, semi-professional race car driver.
Yep.
And so we talked a lot about that, and it was just really like a lot of like building rapport. And I just had a really good feeling when I walked away from it, and the atmosphere of the company. Everything just felt really good. And then he goes, yeah, so we're looking at about like, like I won't name the amount, but it was like you said, like 26 grand more than what I was making currently at the other one. He's like, does that sound about right for you? I'm like, hell yeah.
I could turn that down.
Yep. So, and it's so far it's been really good. So just so you know, yesterday I played Super Smash Bros. On N64 in the office at work.
Oh, I'm sure you do more than play video games at work.
Right, but it's just like, I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, hey, it's Friday, we're gonna play Super Smash. Do you want to? I'm like, yeah, because why not? But I'm getting paid more, and everyone just feels more like a team. Like everyone respects each other. Nobody is trying to like manage the other person or anything. It doesn't feel like that. It feels like everyone's working together to achieve a common goal. So everyone values the feedback of everyone else. So I feel like my opinion actually matters. If I read a procedure and I say, hey, I think it'd be better to go about it, so-and-so way. I say, oh yeah, that's a really good idea. I didn't think of that. And so they really value it. And it just feels like I'm much better suited there. It's much more fulfilling. I feel like I'm much more valued there. And honestly, it's a great learning experience. This is like cutting edge stuff that I'm doing now. So I don't know if you know, but so we do like plasma propulsion systems. So I don't know if you know what,
like for space.
Yeah.
Like, okay. I mean, I'm familiar with like where they're ejecting like xenon particles and all that kind of stuff to like.
So we inject xenon gas, and then we use like magnets and like coils to
hyper accelerate it.
Yeah, so we ionize it.
Yep.
And it becomes plasma.
Okay, cool.
It's just
I've read a little bit about that. I'm not super familiar.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah. So It's really cool stuff. Like it's a good learning experience, but it's just like, wow. Like I did not expect to be here.
That's really cool. I think there are a couple, there more than a couple. There's several things there in that story that I really want to highlight, right? I think one is like when you made the shift from I'm trying to work as few hours as possible to I'm trying to do something that I really enjoy, it created like a step change in your response. And it's funny because in many ways it didn't reflect in anything externally, especially like on an easy apply. Like there's no way that they know that.
Yeah.
Right. But it did create a change. And I think that, there's an aspect of, and people will call this woo-woo, but I do think there's an aspect of the universe responding, but there's also an aspect of when you show up to the interview, it's a very different dynamic, right? Like people can read your energy in an interview, right? And if you have someone perceptive and they notice that like your goal is to work as low as possible, they're like, oh, I don't really want to work with that person. So the people who, because if you think about it, like if you have a company that's doing all kinds of fun stuff where everybody's counting on each other, everybody has that spirit of camaraderie that you're talking about. They want those people to be invested in the team and not only thinking about doing as little as possible,
Yeah.
Right? If you think about doing as little as possible, you're not going to get access to those kinds of teams, right? You can't have, hey, I want to do as little as possible and I want to be part of a team with a bunch of camaraderie. Those two just they don't work,
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Whereas funny enough, if you say, hey, listen, I'm gonna do whatever it takes. I'm gonna, help the company and the team succeed, right? You do have to be careful that you don't like misallocate that towards a company that will take advantage of it, because that's a recipe for burnout. But if you do find the right company, that's a really good fit. And then they won't burn you out because they care about you too, right? Right? Because like if you don't care about them and they don't care about you, well, that's most employment situations, right? If you don't care about them and they do care about you, that's a temporary situation because eventually they can't afford to have you, sit there as a parasite, right? Yeah. If you care about them and they don't care about you, that's a recipe for burnout. Yeah. And then if you both care about each other, that's a recipe for success.
Yeah.
Right. And I actually never really articulated that before, but I think that, back to my BCG days of 2x2 matrices, right. That's kind of the 2x2 matrix there. And I think that that's something that when you made that shift, you open up that potential there. Another thing that you noted was, you talked about how, you'd been at this other job and you didn't know whether it could be better. You didn't know whether it could, do any of this thing. And that was showing up, especially in your cover letters. And this is something that I've seen a lot is people who are struggling with that same internal work, people who are struggling with that self-doubt, people who are struggling with that self-judgment, that really, really shows up in the cover letter. Mm-hmm. You can get a good resume without dealing with that, especially if you have a resume prep service. You cannot write a real good cover letter without dealing with that.
Absolutely.
Doesn't work. Because to write a real good cover letter, you have to be able to trumpet yourself. You have to be able to express enthusiasm. You have to be able to tell the stories of your successes in a way that's compelling. And, like I was talking to somebody on one of my posts a while back, and she was like, well, I'm really having trouble writing cover letters. Like, I don't feel comfortable doing that. And I would rather just get a job where I don't have to write a cover letter. It's like, well, if you constrain yourself that way, your odds are really low. Maybe you hit the lottery like you did, right? Like in your case, I think that was more than chance. That's one of those synchronicity things. Just looking at the statistics, because you got it on an easy apply, which is like a once in a blue moon thing, and then you show up and the guy who's interviewing you just happens to be share this niche enthusiasm with you.
Right? Like, what are the odds?
It's coincidence. Like, what are the odds?
Yeah.
So. Yeah, I think that by doing that internal work, you unlock like all that stuff, and then suddenly things flow a lot easier. And the whole thing with the pandemic just didn't even affect you, right? Not once did you ever come to me and say, "Hey, Sean, it's a pandemic. There are no jobs." You never told me that.
Nope.
Right? You went and you found them, you made it happen, because there are, right? And people can look at the numbers. Obviously, like a year ago, there's a period of about a month where that was true, right? And then there was a period of another month where it was like semi-true. And then it started to erode really fast, right? And I think that if somebody's trying to avoid doing something that they've got resistance to, like writing a cover letter, going to an interview, there's a temptation for the mind to jump to, hey, that was true then, it's true now. Because it's looking for a reason not to face that resistance, right? Like our minds are tricky, and they'll do all kinds of things to like try to avoid facing resistance, right? If they've got to block around something, they'll try to find a way. And so you got to be really careful of that. And that's the thing is like in your case, like you had a lot of determination. You said, I'm going to do this. And so you were no excuses, right? There may have been times when like subconsciously your mind was kind of like screwing with you in terms of the cover letter, but you never came to me and said, I can't. Right. You came to me and sometimes said, I don't know if I want to. And then I said, okay, well, let's analyze this. Mm-hmm. But like, you're a no excuses kind of guy. And that I think is, has gotten you far in life and will continue to get you far in life.
I think so.
Yeah. Cool. So let's talk about if we look at, mapping forward. Because in your case, the ultimate destination that we talked about is, I think it's really unique and it's really truly you. And I think it's really cool to share that with other people so they kind of get a sense of like, you know, what's possible in the long term. You know, if you spend years working towards something, like where, you know, most people, they're very closed-minded about it. They're like, hey, listen, you know, there are only these options, right? And there are a lot more options, obviously, because if you look at the world, it's a very diverse place, right? But if we look at like, what did we come to and the path that we planned out to get there, which is really interesting and very unorthodox, I think will help open people's minds. So let's talk about the end point first, and then we'll talk about like the potential journey to get there, because the end point is going to sound like super unrealistic to people at first, and then when we walk through the path, you'll be like, oh, that makes sense.
All right, so the end point is to have a business that combines two things that I love the most. So one is racing, and the other is food. So this will be a business in which there is a racetrack with high-end cars that people can drive on the racetrack with, and then go have like, you know, a nice fine dining experience at the restaurant in the same business.
Yep. It just, so for people who aren't aware of the context of this, because again, some people right now are like, oh, that's totally unrealistic. There is a high-end market for high-end racing for corporate events, right? So like, my dad was one of the first people at what was then a little startup named NVIDIA, which has become a pretty big company. And he went to one point, the CEO had a corporate retreat, and they all went to Porsche driving school, right? Which is by obviously Porsche, or Porsche, I believe you pronounce it, right? And so that's actually a very lucrative business, believe it or not. There's a lot of upkeep on the cars, but you know, really high-end corporate people, or, you know, I have, there's another guy who I used to know who came from a wealthy Mexican family, and he went to the Mercedes, you know, racing school, right? And it's a very high margin business, right? Now, having, you know, known people who've gone to this, none of them have ever told me that there's one where they have the restaurant right there, right? But if you think about it, if you spend a long day racing, what are you going to want? You want food? And probably some wine or liquor, right? Like, you know, and so to combine those two, especially at a high level, I think actually hits a part of the market that hasn't been served, right? And with the right branding, there's a lot of potential there. Now, of course, there are a couple obstacles to doing this, right? One is you want to buy a bunch of nice cars and hire ace mechanics to maintain them. It costs money. Right? Not to mention setting up the restaurant, which everybody knows restaurants is pretty capital intensive, right? And the second is, you know, if you're going to run a restaurant, you got to understand how to cook, right? You got to understand food, right? So if we're looking at, you know, those two barriers, what was, you know, walk people through the plan that we put together to get past that.
So, to get to that point, we had to go through the internal journey, as you know. The internal journey involves clearing out basically the BS of the mind, because it's preventing you from seeing what's
No, I'm not talking about the journey of how we got there. I'm talking about the external journey forward of how you're going to get from where you are right now.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So the first step is, or the steps are basically the dream bridges, as you say. So
yes, dream bridges is the term I like to use for the stepping stones along the way.
Yeah. You have to take several steps in different careers to get to the final part. So right now, I am in the first dream bridge, which is my job, and I am pursuing options trading, so I can do some day trading, basically. And that will enable me to maintain my income while freeing up my time. And then I can use more time for something like going to culinary school. I can get my culinary credentials, and then I can, you know, start looking for business partners, or even just do something on my own and start working on the business. And I can save money, you know, building the capital I'll need for that, networking and whatnot, and then I can start the business from there. But so far, those are the main dream bridges we have, and there could be more. Since this particular end game goal happens to be very big, I may start a business before that, like starting a restaurant or opening up like a shop tuning cars or something like that. I haven't fully decided exactly which route I'm going to go, but essentially these are the types of options. So those would be ways to make some more money that I can use towards the end game goal.
Yep. So I love it. So a couple aspects of that I really want to highlight. One is that you said, hey, listen, we've got to, look at, if I want to get to the end goal, which has multiple components and is very big, there may be a couple different routes, right? I may want to start a shop. I may want to start a restaurant, right? I'm going to probably have to go to culinary school. And rather than saying, oh, I haven't done this, therefore I can't, you said, this is where I got to go, right? And no matter which route I take, it's going to end where I want it to end, right? And from where I am now, I can take multiple paths. And then the second thing is around money, because most people go, oh man, that's going to take so much money. I have no idea how I would come up with that money. Okay, yeah, it's just not going to work. Throw it in the trash can, right? That's how a lot of people would think about that, right? Yep. But in this case, options trading is a great avenue. And the reason is very simple. If you get good at it, which is, a very big if, because most people, and not for you, I know you're going to make it because you've got determination and intelligence and good guidance. But for most people, options trading is really hard. But when you get good at options trading, it's exponential, right? So, if you're sitting there and you have some, and I'm going to throw out numbers people are just going to think are crazy, but this, right? Like last year, I had a 700% return on my options account. That's not normal. Nope. Right? I mean, this year I'm already 400% up. So, right. And it's March. So for most people, those are crazy numbers. And part of that is because I have a lot of risk tolerance. Part of that is because I like to think that I'm cleverer than the average options trader. I know what I'm doing. And people don't realize there are options to get a lot of money together, right? Because if you can grow at that rate, honestly, to start what you're talking about, a high-end restaurant with cars, it's going to cost millions of dollars, right? But if you're in a situation where you can, even if you just double your money every year, right? And I know options traders, aside from me, who do that, right? Then, you will get there, right? You put $50,000, you double it every year. It doesn't take a math genius to figure out you'll have several $1 million within a couple of years, Right? And since we're looking at this time frame of, the next 30 or 40 years, right? You've got more than enough time, right? I think that's one of the things is when people don't set long-term goals, you don't give yourself access to the power of compounding. People want to get instantly right now. They want to jump from here to perfect. And that doesn't work, right? It's just like when you said with your job, you're worried about this, you're worried about that. If you worry about, hey, listen, this isn't perfect, I can't go do it. Well, then you're just going to stay stuck on the iceberg. It's going to sink. Yeah. And then when the iceberg sinks, you're screwed, right? Maybe you jump to another iceberg that's less sunk, but eventually you'll get to dry land unless you stay where you are. Right. And so I think that's really important, right? Is when you set that long-term goal, you give yourself access to those kind of long-term unorthodox solutions. Yeah. And just disclaimer for anybody watching, if you are, I know I've talked about the potential of options trading here. I also want to give a warning. If you don't know what you're doing, you can absolutely lose money. You can lose everything. It is one of those kinds of things where if you're not careful, you can bankrupt yourself. You can zero out your account. And honestly, most options training courses are not very good. They will teach you the technical stuff. They will not teach you how to actually make money. And knowing that, rho represents the variation of the option price based on interest rate doesn't help you if you invest in a stock that goes, calls that go down. It doesn't matter. So I would advise everybody caveat emptor, proceed with caution, learn. I highly recommend practicing your trading with paper money, which is, imaginary electronic money that isn't real money, to kind of get a sense of it. Brian, you're doing that on TD Ameritrade Thinkorswim. You're doing paper trading. And until you're consistently profitable in paper trading, you're not putting any real money in. That is the cautious, prudent way to go about that, right? You don't want to be sitting there playing for lottery tickets and being like, YOLO, here's my chance. And like flush your life savings. Like that's not what I recommend.
And unfortunately, some people do that.
I know. I have seen that. I saw somebody posted his account. He goes, "How am I going to explain to my wife that I lost our life savings?" And it was like 83% decline because he bought GameStop when it was $300 a share. But to be fair to him, GameStop's rallied, so I don't know if he held it or sold, if he sold it or not. I hope for his sake he held it. But it's especially if people have been watching the past couple of months, it's very volatile. You need to be careful. You need to think it through. You need to practice, right? But then once you get it, it does open up a lot of opportunities because it doesn't necessarily have to be very time intensive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I spend like 15 minutes a day trading, and in the past 2 weeks, I've pulled more money out of that than most people make in a year, right?
Yeah.
So it can be done, right? But be careful, do your homework, practice, validate it, right? I mean, for you, right? If you're going to culinary school, that's a big time commitment.
Yeah.
Now it's also a big financial commitment because not only are you paying them, but you're also not earning money, right?
Yeah.
And so, given the lifestyle that you want to keep up, right? And you just got engaged, right? You've got somebody to provide for, right? Having that source of income where it's like, hey, listen, I can, make money 15 minutes a day, which I always need to warn people about this. That mindset of I want to make as much money in the shortest amount of time almost always leads to ruin. And in options trading, it will totally bankrupt you.
Yep.
But if you have the mindset of, hey, listen, I want to create this dream, what's the most efficient way to do it? And you're striving for something bigger, it will fundamentally change how the universe reacts to you and how you react to different inputs and outputs. And in trading, your psychology is everything. So,
Yep.
those are just some points that I want to highlight because I want people to see this clear-eyed and fully aware of the potential consequences.
Yeah, definitely.
So cool, man. So right now we're looking at, right now you moved from a big corporate bureaucracy with all the traditional burnout and conflict. You're now in an exciting startup making, significantly more than you were before. You're going to build up a financial freedom income by options trading, and then, use that money to, go to culinary school, potentially start, a shop or restaurant or maybe both. And then eventually build this big purpose that we've talked about, put together a business plan, maybe find the right partners, which, by the way, I would recommend you use disc analysis in terms of finding the right partners, and you and me can talk through that. But that's something I help Aaron Royce with, another client who I did this video with.
Cool.
That's a big deal. So that's the story, everyone. I know it looks really complex on the outside, but if you put the right thought into it and you put that together, it shows you how you can go from, this dead end job to something really amazing. And if you connect all the pieces, you can make it work. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something that most people just don't realize. So Brian, do you have any final words that you'd like to share with everyone?
Oh man. Yeah. So I will say, like, the world will find ways to tell you you shouldn't do something that you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people that try to tell me to not even get involved in this program with Sean and say, no, this isn't worth it. This guy's just trying to sell you something, blah, 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 And honestly, like, those people are just kind of still stuck doing the same things that they've been doing. And maybe for them, for some people, it's okay. I know that when I was in my corporate jobs, that I really burnt out from, I just couldn't imagine myself living like that long term. If you're anything like me, you need to do something about it. Either somebody once told me, like, I don't know if this analogy really applies, but somebody once said, like, in terms of cars, like, you can either schedule maintenance or maintenance will be scheduled for you. And I think that matters for your life too. You can either make time to, be happy, or it's going to sort of force itself, into your life. And this is kind of how I feel about this. I feel like the universe sort of made me feel uncomfortable to push me towards this direction, to push me into this program, and to push me towards my goals.
And towards that internal transformation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And all of these things are like, I had to make the conscious decision to do something about it. So for those that are on the fence about making this decision, the way I see it is your choice is either you can be happy or you can be miserable. You can either like make a choice to do something and control your life or not. And then, you know, you go down a spiral. But I feel like this was really a lot more valuable than I expected. I definitely don't think you, Sean, are the type of person that just wants to sell people something. I think you're actually.
I could not work another day in my life. I could just sit and trade options 15
Yeah,
minutes.
yeah. No, really, like truly, I feel like you're the kind of person that just wants to help people. And if people are willing to devote themselves to their outcome and, you know, invest in themselves, then come hell or high water, you're the kind of person that's going to make sure that you get the outcome.
I appreciate that. That's very kind. And I will tell people, I will say I'm the most committed motherfucker you'll ever meet.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a caveat there, though. You said you've got to invest in yourself, and not just you know, time and money and all that, but you've got to be willing to face your demons, right?
Oh,
and
yeah.
That is not an easy process. As much as we glossed over it earlier and we talked about how amazing it is, and it is amazing, it's also like really hard, right?
It's really hard.
I know for me, it was probably harder than it needed to be, and it was a very difficult, painful experience.
For me,
and it doesn't
too.
have to be that painful, right? Obviously, like if you have a mentor, like for you, it was way easier than it was for me, right?
Really?
Well, I ended up almost shooting myself in the face. So.
Oh yeah.
It got really bad.
That's pretty. Yeah, it doesn't get much worse than that.
Yeah, I know I'm making light of it now, and obviously, you know, it's a very serious subject, but it's something that I feel like you do have to be transparent about, right? Because a lot of people, you know, a lot of people think that if they're that far gone, there's no way back. But in reality, for me, I was forged in that fire, and that's why I'm the most committed motherfucker you'll ever meet, because I've been to the edge, right? And so, you know, certainly I would say to people, like, no matter how bad it is, there's always redemption. That's the beauty of life, is that you can always write a new chapter to your story. Okay? And I do love helping. If somebody shows up committed, I love helping people who show up committed do that, right? It's way more than, as you say, it's way more than income, right? It is my purpose, you know? And I talk about people finding purpose. That's my purpose.
Yeah.
Right? And then I view it as a sacred duty, which I think, you know, as someone who's worked with me, you know, you've seen, and so that, I appreciate that, man. That's very kind.
And the thing is, like, I feel that's really good about you is that you're all about the truth, like really the truth, not just like BS. So like, you know, there's people that I know. Well, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, it can be
double-edged sword.
It can be, you know, bad at times, you know, brutally honest, but at the same time, like there were times when I didn't believe in myself as much, but you believe more in me. And so like, I feel that really helped me to move forward. And I don't think that there's many.
I'm not the kind of person who just says, hey, listen, I believe in you no matter what, right? Like I really take a look at it. And if I don't believe, then I don't say, hey, listen, you're screwed. What I say is, hey, this is the thing that's in your way. Once you get past this, it's, you know, green fields, right? But once people, you know, I mean, in your case, the only thing that was stopping you from green fields was your own self-doubt. Or not the only thing, but like the primary thing. So but
I just feel like that's something that's really good in a coach, because like there's some people that will just blow sunshines and rainbows up your ass basically and just, you know, tell you nice nothings and it doesn't mean anything. But it's nice to know that you're more about the truth. So if I feel that you know, you're telling me something good about myself, it is true.
Yep, absolutely. I think that's the thing, is that some people can see me as like a bit intense because I'm very like just blunt about stuff. But the converse of that is that if I'm, you know, completely positive, then you know that I have a reason for it, and it's not just random, you know. But at the end of the day, though, and this is something I tell people a lot, confidence, it can start coming from someone else, but at the end of the day, it has to come from within. And when you develop that ability to do that, everything changed.
Yes.
So awesome.
Totally agree.
Cool. Well, let me put up the link here. If anybody is interested in, as Brian said, making that, commitment to themselves, to their careers, if people are interested in finding purpose and getting clear on that big goal that maybe they didn't believe in, then I have a link at the bottom of the screen going across right now. It's www.oculusinstitute.com/scheduling. You can go to that link. You can book a call. As of right now, you actually get to talk to me. Probably at some point in the future, I'll have people who work for me. But for now, you will get to talk to me live. So go to that link, book a call, and we'll see if it's a fit. I'll be honest, it's not always a fit. Sometimes, someone's in a position where I'm not the best person to help them right now. And if that's the case, then I will direct you to whatever resource is best for you right now at this point in your life. But again, that's all about the truth. And then that if I say, hey, this is a fit, it's because I mean it's a fit. To be honest, fewer than 50% of the people who give me a call, it's the right fit right now, right? Many cases it's, hey, listen, this is going to be a good fit later. But, again, it's all about being honest. And so, if you're ready to do that, if you're sick of being in a career that isn't serving you, if you are bored out, if you are burned out, if you are bored, if you don't have something to look forward to in your career and you're just counting down to retirement, that is the problem that I specialize in solving. And when it comes to people who show up committed like Brian and do all of the work, I am so far, fingers crossed, 100% success rate at getting them clear on a purpose that they can really be enthusiastic about down the road. And God willing that keep that up, which I probably will, because I don't give up until we get there. Because as I said, very committed individual. So awesome. Well, Brian, thank you for coming on, man. I really do want to honor you, right? As I said, that no excuses mentality has worked wonders. The transformations, both internal and external, have been huge, and I'm really proud of you. And thank you for coming on and sharing your story with everybody so that they can see what's possible, not just for you, but potentially for them as well.
Thanks, Sean. I appreciate it, and I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Cheers, everyone. I will hopefully speak to you soon.
All right.